What's up, guys? Blood Moon Bobby here, and my Mobile World Congress coverage is beginning. So, even though I'm not in Barcelona, even though I'd really like to go, Barcelona seems like a really cool place, there's still plenty to talk about, at least from a stateside perspective, although it would be really sweet if I could get my hands on a lot of the products that are being announced at Mobile World Congress. So, today, the day I'm uploading this episode, this video will be up, by Wednesday. I'll be covering Samsung, LG, and Huawei's products, at least the ones that caught my attention, including the Galaxy S9 and Huawei's new MateBook X Pro. And then, since the next time I'll be able to meet with you guys will be this coming Saturday, I'll be making a video on Sony's new products, including their new high-end phone. I believe it's called the ZX2, as well as Nokia's flagship and their banana phone. So you'll hear more about it this coming weekend. So let's start off with the darling of Mobile World Congress. God, that is such a interesting way to put it. The Samsung Galaxy S9. This is pretty much the talk of the show. And the funny thing is that well, actually, let's go back a little. So, we all know last year Samsung was one of the very first companies, along with LG, to make flagship smartphones with super thin bezels, like bezels you almost can't see. And honestly, I was very skeptical of it and thought it was really gimmicky, like Samsung, LG, and then Apple were just doing this just to look for ways to excite consumers. And then the funny thing was, I then got my hands on the Galaxy S8 not too long after it was announced. My friend Gabby Racias, who you know does the Butterfly Show with me sometimes, and got her hands on it, and it was a really good looking phone. It had a really nice screen, and it was a very premium feeling phone. I mean, as with any phone that has a glass back, yes, there's obviously that kind of fragility, but I thought it was a really neat looking phone, and I've gotten to try it a couple times after that. So with the S9, Samsung is taking more of a back seat. Like, I guess you could say this is them pulling an iPhone 5S or 6S, but as with any new smartphone, what matters to me most is if it has new hardware, that means it's going to perform faster and it's going to last longer than its predecessors. And that's pretty much what Samsung does, and it also has a few new features that are actually pretty surprising. When I was typing up notes for this video, I actually had to cut some things out. Like, even though many of the new features are incremental, there's still plenty to talk about. So what does the S9 and S9 Plus have? They pretty much have the same screens as their predecessors. The S9 has a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED screen, whereas the S9 Plus has a bigger 6.2-inch. And the thing about the bezels is that they're ever so slightly thinner than they were on the S8, so you have the bit of convenience. The S9 uses 4 gigabytes of RAM just like the S8 and S7, but the S9 Plus actually goes up to 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is definitely a good boost, although I kind of wish that they both had 8 gigabytes of RAM, especially in this price range. I believe the ZTE Axon 7 actually had 8 gigabytes of RAM. Don't quote me on that, but I know there have been smartphones coming out with 8 gigabytes, and they're cheaper than the Samsung Galaxy S9. So, I mean, 4 gigabytes of RAM is still decent, but it would be nice for this price range if it had some more. And both phones, depending on your region, will come with 64, 128, or 250 gigabytes of storage, which I'm really glad. Even the base is plenty of storage, but if you want to add more, you can now store up to 400 gigabytes of external storage using a micro SD card slot, which I think is kind of weird because the Nintendo Switch you could actually put up to a 2 terabyte card, and I know in the case of this one it's limited to 400 gigabytes because with smartphones or at least right now in terms of memory cards, the ones you can get are like 128 or 256 gigabytes. Since 512 gigabyte cards, although they're pricey, maybe that's why they didn't. The S9 won't support it, are coming out. I wish it could go up to 512, but still 400 gigabytes is still plenty. I think, even if you get something like a 200 gigabyte card, like the way if I were to buy the S9, which I really wish I could, I would probably do something like get the 64 gigabyte version, since it's still plenty of storage and it's the cheapest offering. But then I would get like a 256 gigabyte micro SD card from Amazon. So that way, it's cheaper and external storage. So once that card fills up, you can put in another. So you got plenty of storage with the S9. And for those who've been following me, yes, I'm recovering from a cold. I'm feeling much better right now, but just bear with me if I still have to cough. And to me, one of the most important features, especially on a smartphone, aside from the ability to make calls, and I'm pretty sure the S9's voice quality is going to sound really good, is the processor. If anything, that's the one feature I always look for in a new smartphone, because I'm not expecting a smartphone to always reinvent the wheel every time we get yearly upgrades. What matters to me most is it fast and can I use it for the next few years? And in the case of the S9, it gets Qualcomm's new Snapdragon 845 processor. In certain regions, including the US, we're going to get Samsung's Exynos 9810 processor, but it should perform just as good. Now, here's the headlining feature that Samsung's been advertising quite a bit with the S9 even before the announcement, and that is the new camera, or cameras, on the S9. So both the S9 and S9 Plus have 12 megapixel cameras. The S9 has a wide-angle 12 megapixel camera, and the S9 Plus has a telephoto 12 megapixel camera. I mean, the S9 Plus has a wide and telephoto lens, two cameras, and they both have 12 megapixel sensors. But the interesting thing about the wide-angle sensors is that these are the first two smartphones to actually have variable aperture. Now, it's not like on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera where you can go from the fastest aperture all the way down to like an f/22. The only two you're getting are f/1.5 or f/2.4, which to translate it down into simpler terms, basically it means you have one mode that collects a good amount of light and one mode that collects a lot more light. I mean, f/1.5, I believe, is around a stop more of extra light. So that's basically what you need to know. It would be interesting if you could dial down the aperture down to something like an f/8 or f/5.6, but I think the thing is, because smartphone sensors are so small, it's very difficult to get those shallow depth of field shots unless you get in really close. So I think even if you could dial it down to an f/5.6 or an f/8, it probably wouldn't make that much of a difference. But still, you get two basically new low light modes. So you can adjust the opening of the lens. One option lets you go collect a ton more light than the other. So that's basically what you need to know. And on the S9 Plus, like I said, it has the wide-angle lens with the two aperture choices, but it also has a telephoto lens with an f/2.4, which is understandable for a telephoto lens that the aperture is a tad slower, but still f/2.4 is still a really nice bright aperture. And so, on top of having a 4K video that can shoot up to 60 frames per second, which is neat, the S9 phones can record slow motion video at not just 480 frames per second, but all the way down to 960 frames per second at 720p. So you're going to get really slow motion. If you're into that kind of thing. Like on a lot of flagship phones, it's the kind of slow-mo where it starts off in like a regular frame rate, and then it goes down to slow-mo. So it's kind of a neat feature to have. I honestly don't know. Do you guys use the slow motion modes on your phones. I usually don't, and I've had a couple smartphones that can do that. But still, 960 frames per second is still a really crazy slow motion, so it's got that. And so the S9 will also have similar portrait lighting modes that are in the newest iPhones, using the front facing camera. And the nice thing to kind of go off the cameras now about the S9 phones is that they moved the fingerprint sensor from the right of the camera lens to below the camera lens. And so it kind of looks like a soda, that thing on soda cans that helps you open the can, but it's in a much more logical location. And I do like where it's placed. My Nexus 5X had the fingerprint sensor put there, and it's a natural place for your index finger to lie. I still prefer when they put fingerprint sensors on the front, like on an iPhone, only because you can access it pretty much any time, even if the phone is on the table. But still, the back of the phone below the camera lens is still a pretty good spot. And one new feature the S9 has is not only can you unlock with your fingerprint, you can also, like previous Samsungs, unlock using the irises in your eyes, and it also has a face unlock feature that's kind of like the iPhone 10. But you can also use another fingerprint, like another finger, to unlock your let's see, I have it here. I want to use the proper terminology. As my phone buzzes, and it lets you use another fingerprint to unlock your secure folders. So that's really cool feature. And another cool thing about the S9, I know some people will say, oh, just use headphones, which, yes, the S9 has a headphone jack. And I gotta say, I just got the iPhone 7, and even though I really like the phone, lacking a headphone jack is less than a good idea, to put it nicely. I've ranted about that on Twitter. But like the more recent iPhones, the S9 has stereo speakers, and like the recent iPhones, the way the S9 speakers works is it uses both the earpiece and the bottom speaker, which is an update I feel like has been a long time coming for the S9. I would have preferred if it was dual front-facing speakers, but since everybody is moving on to bezel-less phones, and it is working in Samsung's favor, this is what they're doing. The nice thing about this stereo speaker system is that it is being tuned by AKG, and the phone utilizes Dolby Atmos software, so it's going to sound a lot nicer than these I think these pseudo stereo speakers have been sounding. I know HTC also did something like this on the HTC 10. I don't know if these stereo speakers are going to be like ZTE Axon 7 quality, because on the Axon 7 the speakers were both front facing, but it should sound a lot nicer than a lot of these pseudo stereo speaker systems have been. And so one creepy feature, and this was just as creepy when Apple did something like this with their frickin' Emojis. The S9 has something called AR emojis, which look like scary-ass Mii characters, like scary versions of the Mii characters on your Nintendo Switch. And kind of like the iPhone 10, the AR emoji, how that works is it scans your face, and you can even scan down to your emotions and it can create emojis based on your facial expressions, which, yay. I mean, I don't know, like, I guess since emojis are more in vogue than something like the Animojis, I don't really know. Are people gonna use the AR emojis a lot more. Like, comment below if you guys want to use it, or comment below if you're just as scared as I am of the AR emojis. Moving on, the S9 continues to have Samsung's controversial Bixby feature. Unfortunately, you can't change what the Bixby button does on the Galaxy S9 phones, which, I honestly don't hate Bixby that much. Like, I really think people, like, hate this feature only because you can't change what the Bixby button does. But I basically see it as it's Samsung's answer to Siri and Google Assistant. They've been trying this kind of thing for a while. Like, you guys remember the Samsung S Voice? So yeah, what Bixby can do on the S9 now is you could actually scan your environment. Like, if something is written in a foreign language, you can point the S9 camera at the, like, let's say a sign in Japanese, Spanish, you know, and it'll translate that into English. I'm hearing that Bixby is powered by Google Translate, so I wouldn't rely on it per se. Like, I don't think online translators are really getting to the point where you can, you know, use it in place of like a real life translator, but I guess it's there. And of course, if you don't want to use Bixby, you know, you don't have to. And so the S9 continues Samsung's support of DeX, their solution to turning your smartphone into something more like a computer. And they're coming out with a new DeX pad, which is a more compact form of their DeX accessory that they came out with last year. And so so just like the S8, you can use the S9 as a computer. And the Galaxy S9 does have IP68 water and dust resistance. And so if you accidentally drop your S9 in a toilet, it's going to smell stinky, but it'll work just fine. The S9 and S9 Plus will be coming on March 16th to select markets, and it's going to be sold in midnight black, titanium gray, coral blue, and the famous lilac blue colors. The S9, if you buy it straight from Samsung, will be priced at $720, and the S9 Plus will be priced at $840. The nice thing is that Samsung is letting you pay, if you buy the unlocked version, they'll actually let you pay in increments. Or are you taking notes, Apple? And so, the interesting thing is, you may actually want to get the S9 and S9 Plus from Samsung themselves, rather than going through a carrier, because if you guys go online and look up the carrier prices, they're expensive. Like, I saw that the S9 is going to cost $790 on AT&T. So you may just want to purchase your S9 unlocked through Samsung, and then maybe you could buy like an AT&T Nano SIM card or Verizon Sprint, whatever you like. Because even though like the S9 and S9 Plus are really cool sounding phones, you probably don't want to pay more than you really want to. So that's the Samsung Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. I know they're definitely more incremental upgrades, especially compared to something like the Galaxy S8. But honestly, I'm fine with incremental upgrades as long as there's a new processor, and you know, if there are any new features, you know, then that's good. But what matters to me most is having a new processor and maybe something like a new camera, because like I said before, I'm not expecting, you know, the smartphone market to make something as revolutionary as the very first iPhone again and again and again. You know, that's not how human nature works. And so far the S9, you know, even though it's not exactly a game changer, it still sounds like a pretty impressive phone. So, alright guys, this has been Bloodboom Bobby. I hope you guys continue to follow me for the rest of my Mobile World Congress coverage. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be covering LG and Huawei today, and this weekend you'll be seeing videos on Sony and Nokia's announcements at Mobile World Congress. So if you guys want me to cover any other companies, just feel free to let me know in the comments or shoot me an email. My email address is in the description of this video. So, alright, so thank you for watching. Hey guys, this has been a Blood Moon Bobby video. Please like this video or dislike it, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.